The decision took less than 5 minutes. That was the part people never believed later. They imagined shouting. Threats. A dramatic meeting where voices were raised and doors slammed. They thought being kicked out of a family business must feel explosive. It didn't. It felt administrative. We were sitting in the same boardroom where I had spent more than half my adult life. Same long table. Same leather chairs. Same framed photos on the wall. Handshakes, ribbon cuttings, smiling faces pretending success was effortless. My uncle cleared his throat and adjusted his tie. "We've discussed this at length," he said, avoiding my eyes. "The board feels it's time to move in a different direction." My cousin nodded quickly. Too quickly. He was trying to look confident, but his fingers kept tapping the table. "A cleaner structure," my aunt added. "Less confusion." I listened without interrupting. That alone seemed to make them uncomfortable. "And given recent disagreements," my uncle continued, "we've decided to terminate your involvement with the company, effective immediately." I waited for the rest. There wasn't any. No thank you. No acknowledgement of the years. No mention of the fact that I'd helped build this company from a rented warehouse and 2 delivery trucks. Just silence. "So I'm out," I said calmly. My cousin finally looked at me. "It's not personal." I almost smiled. Family businesses love that phrase. It's how they disguise betrayal as professionalism. "I understand," I said. "Do you need anything else from me?" That question caught them off guard. My uncle frowned. "No. Security will escort you out." I nodded, stood up, and gathered my laptop. No one stopped me. As I walked out, I passed the glass wall that overlooked the production floor. Employees were moving efficiently, focused, unaware that a line had just been crossed upstairs. Security followed me to the elevator. "Sorry about this," one of them muttered. "It's fine," I replied honestly. Because by the time the elevator doors closed, I already knew something they didn't. The family business wasn't just a business. It was a structure. And I had designed the most important parts of it. 3 days earlier, before that meeting even happened, I had noticed something off. Payments clearing slower than usual. An internal approval request bouncing back without explanation. Small things. Things no one else paid attention to. But I did. I always did. Years ago, when the company was barely surviving, my family had asked me to handle the boring stuff. Systems. Compliance. Vendor relationships. Banking frameworks. They wanted growth. I wanted stability. So I built it. Quietly. I structured our accounts across multiple institutions, layered access controls, and negotiated terms that gave us flexibility no one else in our industry had. I made sure the company could survive sudden shocks, market crashes, supplier failures, legal freezes. And in doing so, I made myself indispensable. Just not visibly so. They never asked how it worked. They just assumed it always would. That night, after being escorted out, I went home and poured myself a drink. Not out of anger. Out of habit. I opened my laptop. No company email access. No internal chat. Just my personal system. I logged into a secure portal I hadn't needed in years. The dashboard loaded instantly. Green indicators. Stable balances. Clean compliance status. Exactly as expected. The family business was still running smoothly. For now. The next morning, my phone buzzed with a message from my cousin. "We'll mail your personal items from the office." I didn't reply. Instead, I reviewed the documentation they had never bothered to read. Vendor agreements with contingency clauses. Banking arrangements that required unanimous authorization under specific conditions. Risk protocols triggered by governance changes. Like, for example, removing a founding operational architect without transition planning. By noon, the first alert triggered automatically. Nothing dramatic. Just a notification. Account access under review. I closed the laptop and went for a walk. People always think revenge starts with action. It doesn't. It starts with patience. By the second day, the word temporary started getting used a lot. Temporary delay. Temporary review. Temporary technical issue. It was the kind of language people use when they don't yet understand what's actually happening, but they're afraid to admit it. I found out because my phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Missed calls. Voicemails. Emails sent to an address they assumed I no longer checked. I checked everything. Quietly. The first call I answered was from our finance director. Not family. A professional. Someone who knew the difference between noise and danger. Are you aware of what's happening? He asked without greeting. Yes, I said. He exhaled slowly. We're seeing account restrictions across 3 institutions. That's expected, I replied. A pause. Expected by you? Yes. He didn't ask how. He didn't ask why. He'd worked long enough in systems to recognize cause and effect. Can this be reversed? He asked. It can be corrected, I said. Reversal implies a mistake. Another pause. I'll inform the board, he said quietly. By midday, the boardroom that had pushed me out was full again. Same chairs. Same table. Different energy. My uncle was pacing now. My cousin sat hunched over his laptop, refreshing the same screen again and again like it might change its mind. This is absurd, my aunt snapped. Banks don't just freeze accounts, Elle. They do, my uncle replied, voice tight, when protocols trigger. What protocols? My cousin asked. No one answered him. Because no one had bothered to learn. I knew exactly which ones had triggered. The moment they removed me from my operational role without filing the corresponding transition documentation, the system flagged it as a governance anomaly. Not illegal. Just unstable. Banks don't like instability. So they pause. They ask questions. They wait. And while they wait, money stops moving. Vendors noticed first. Deliveries slowed. Invoices went unanswered. Credit terms tightened overnight. By evening, suppliers were calling directly. Is everything okay? We haven't received confirmation. Our system shows your account is under review. My cousin called me at 9:47 p.m. You need to fix this, he said without saying hello. I leaned back in my chair. Fix what? You know exactly what, he snapped. The accounts. The banks. This is on you. I let the silence stretch. You removed me, I said calmly. Why would I still have authority? That was just a formality, he said quickly. This is different. Is it? I asked. He swallowed. We can talk about reinstating you. I smiled to myself. Reinstating. Talk to the board, I replied. They made the decision. They're panicking, he admitted. Orders are stuck. Payroll is coming up. Then they should follow procedure, I said. Which procedure? He demanded. The ones you ignored, I replied. I ended the call. On the third day, the freeze escalated. Not because I pushed it. Because no one stopped it. Automated risk reviews triggered secondary checks. Compliance departments requested documentation that didn't exist. The absence of records spoke louder than any accusation. By noon, the company couldn't move money at all. No outgoing payments. No incoming transfers. No access beyond basic balances. The phrase company freeze began circulating. That was when my uncle showed up at my door. He looked older than I remembered. Smaller. "We need to talk," he said. I let him in. He sat on my couch like a man who'd finally realized the ground wasn't solid. "You did this," he said softly. Not accusing. Acknowledging. "I built the system," I replied. "It's doing exactly what it was designed to do." He rubbed his hands together. "We didn't think it would come to this." "You didn't think at all," I said. "You assumed." He looked up. "Can you stop it?" "Yes." Hope flickered in his eyes. "But I won't," I added. It died just as quickly. "This business feeds families," he said. "Employees depend on it." "So did I replied. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. Because for the first time, he understood the difference between family and control. "You have leverage," he said quietly. "No," I corrected him. "I have alignment." He left without another word. That evening, the board convened an emergency meeting. Without me. By midnight, they had one conclusion. They needed me back. But by then, it was too late to pretend this was about a job. The freeze wasn't personal. It was procedural. And procedures don't care about apologies. By the morning of the fourth day, the word temporary disappeared completely. No one used it anymore. Banks don't announce freezes the way movies do. There are no alarms, no dramatic phone calls. Things simply stop. Transfers don't clear. Confirmations don't arrive. Dashboards that once showed movement turn into flat lines. Silence. That silence spread faster than panic. Payroll was supposed to run at noon. At 11:07 a.m., the HR director sent an internal message asking for confirmation that funds had been released. At 11:19, she sent another. At 11:41, she called the finance director directly. At 11:58, the system declined the batch. That was the moment it became real. Employees didn't know yet, but leadership did. And leadership reacts to fear the same way every time, by looking for someone to blame. My cousin called again. This time, his voice was shaking. "We're out of time," he said. "You have to help us." I didn't respond immediately. "Please," he added. "This isn't about pride anymore." "It never was," I replied. I opened my laptop and logged into the same secure portal I had checked days earlier. The dashboard looked different now. Yellow warnings had turned red. Automated notices stacked neatly on the right side of the screen, each one triggered by the same root cause. Governance breach. Unauthorized structural change. Missing transition authority. I didn't create the freeze. I let the system finish what it had started. At noon exactly, my uncle, my aunt, and my cousin were sitting in the same boardroom where they had removed me. The same room that had felt so decisive just days earlier now felt small, crowded, and unforgiving. This time, the chairs weren't filled with confidence. They were filled with desperation. The bank's compliance officer joined the call remotely. So did an external auditor. No family faces. No sympathy. Just procedure. Until governance discrepancies are resolved, the auditor said, all corporate accounts will remain restricted. My uncle leaned toward the microphone. What discrepancies? Operational authority was revoked without filing mandatory transition documentation, the auditor replied. This triggered a risk escalation. My cousin snapped, "We're fixing that." "You can't," the auditor said calmly. The individual responsible for the system architecture must certify the correction. Silence. Everyone in the room already knew who that was. My phone rang. I answered. "We're on the call," my uncle said quietly. "They need you." I joined without video. I didn't need them to see my face. "This is him," my uncle said. "He built the system." The auditor's tone changed immediately. Thank you for joining. We have some questions. I'm listening, I said. Do you confirm that the governance protocols currently triggering the freeze are functioning as designed? Yes, I replied. And do you confirm that correcting the issue requires your authorization? Yes. Are you willing to provide it? I paused. Not for effect. For accuracy. I'm no longer affiliated with the company, I said. I was formally removed. The compliance officer nodded. Then you no longer have a duty to act. That's correct, I said. My cousin leaned into the camera. You're destroying everything. No, I replied calmly. I'm not interfering. The auditor cleared his throat. In that case, the freeze will remain until a court-appointed resolution is reached. My uncle's face collapsed. Court meant time. Time meant collapse. The call ended. By the end of the day, vendors halted deliveries. Creditors tightened terms. News hadn't broken yet, but whispers had. In business circles, whispers move faster than headlines. That evening, my cousin showed up again. This time, he didn't knock. He stood outside my door, staring at it like it might forgive him. We were wrong, he said when I opened it. About you. About everything. I studied his face. The arrogance was gone. What remained was fear. You didn't misunderstand me, I said. You discounted me. He swallowed. Tell us what you want. I shook my head slowly. There's nothing to negotiate, I said. You already made your choice. He stepped back, defeated. 2 weeks later, the company filed for restructuring. Not bankruptcy. That would have been dramatic. Just a quiet admission that control had been lost. Assets were sold. Departments were cut. The family name was removed from the letterhead within a month. No one announced it. They didn't have to. The business world understood what it meant. I moved on. I took a consulting role with a firm that valued architecture more than appearances. I built systems again. Cleaner ones, smarter ones, with clearer lines of authority. On my terms. Sometimes people ask what it felt like to watch a family business fall apart. I tell them the truth. It didn't fall apart. It froze. Because structures don't collapse when you attack them. They collapse when you remove the person who understood how they stayed alive. And by the time they realized that, it was already too late.